Awakening with Brahma Kumaris.
I'm Shanti, and welcome to Awakening with Brahma Kumaris. Today we've got a new style of show, and that will be with us for the next 6 or 7 shows. A series of conversations between myself, Carolyn Ward, I'm from Chile in South America, and Sister Jenna from Washington, D.C. What we're going to endeavour to do is take you through the Brahma Kumaris Rajyoga meditation course over the next few shows. And we're going to explore through our collective experience, which is probably nearly 40, 50 years or something, we're going to explore the different themes that exist in the philosophy of the Brahma Kumaris in a very practical way. So it's not a lofty theory, it's actually, how does it make sense? Who am I?
Yeah.
How do I meditate? How useful is it to know who God is and how I can connect with God? What about karma? You know, the big K word. And then we're going to look at how time turns and what is the time that we're in, and this great time and the way that this cycle of time is turning and how it supports us and supports the world. So these are the kinds of things we're going to touch on in our conversations.
One of my favorite lessons in the studies is about who am I? And I used to laugh at myself. How could I be spending 24 hours a day with myself, wake up, go to bed with myself, and I still don't know myself?
It's crazy,
And
isn't
I'm
it?
constantly, like when I was much younger, I'd be looking for someone to try to tell me who I am.
Yeah.
Or I'm always looking for someone to understand what I'm trying to say or understand what, who I am. And it wasn't until I started the meditation techniques of Rajyoga that I learned that the more I became quiet, the more I understood myself.
Yeah, and not from a thinking perspective, right? You can have a lesson, you can have an intellectual framework that says, okay, you're not your body, number one lesson, you're a soul. What is a soul? It's the living life force energy that gives life to this form.
Yeah.
Sits inside the body, sits here, third eye. So you know that information and you can know it really well. But how do you become the information? Which means you know it, you live it. And that's where the meditation practice comes in, isn't it?
I think one of the things I've experienced in the sessions that we share at our meditation centers all around the world, for me it's in Washington at the moment, I think many people have an understanding that I am a soul. The experience of feeling the self as a soul in peace, that needs to be developed.
Yeah.
So when we touch on the first lesson that the soul's original worth, the soul's original value is love and its purity and its truth and its peace and its happiness, then the soul sits with itself and thinks, do I sit in silence and do I feel that without any what they call props on a movie set?
Like, so without too much music.
Without too
or
much external influences to make me feel that. And one of the greatest gifts I know in the meditation course at the Brahma Kumaris is that I now have a tool which is called knowledge of who and what I truly am. I don't have to go looking for that anymore. But I have knowledge of how to experience myself as this blissful soul.
Can you tell us, what is the knowledge of how I can experience myself as that? Because you've said, okay, we're peace, we're purity, and I want to pick up on what is purity in a minute too. We're happiness, we're wisdom, we're love. Now, we could probably pick up a book in a shop and find a list of those, but what you're saying, and what I know to be true as well, is that the practice is, how do I experience the truth of that? And truth was the other quality.
Was the
So
big one,
why don't we talk a little bit about that? How do I go into the experience of the bliss of being that?
Well, first and foremost, let's say, for example, as we're sitting here, whether you're watching the show, listening to the show, or you and I are sitting here at the Global Retreat Center in Delhi, the soul inside of the body is speaking to you at this time and is sharing its time with the audience at this time. But when I've understood that the natural, innate quality of my existence is loving and is peaceful, then I make a remembrance, I make an attempt to bring that quality and virtue into my expression, into my action. It's spirituality. We used to think that spirituality was going up into the Himalayas and chanting mantras and reading the scriptures It's not. It's a coming back to what you're feeling you want to be. You want to feel happy. You want to feel loved. You want to be able to give love to everyone. You know, when it comes on to being in a relationship, you're married to someone and you have in-laws and then you've got children, there are times in which people are not going to give you exactly the way you want it. And you find that this feeling of love is very hard to extend to the person. It's not that you don't love them, you do love them. You
But
do
it's
love
not
them.
flowing
But
at
somehow,
some point.
somehow it's not extending because what? Well, they did this, they said this, they were like this to me, this happened. But something I learned along the way is that you should not allow anyone whatsoever, to be so powerful that they stop you from loving. And so when you're in your soul conscious awareness that that's my natural nature, that's my natural religion, it's okay if you play the part of giving me sorrow, but my part is to believe who I am and to keep playing that with you.
No, I'm
And that's what soul consciousness is, and that's what who I am is. It's to be the soul who's comfortable with being true, with speaking to somebody with love, with speaking to someone with peace, even if you weren't kind to me the day before.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and 20 years on in my practice, I know that to be true. But I'm thinking back to when I was just at the beginning, you know, or even 5 years along, and it was really hard to do that, even with, you know, daily practice, daily meditation. And I used to do this practice of, okay, I, the soul, the spark, the living being, who moves this body, uses the, you know, the machine of the brain or the faculty of the brain. I'm taking my body for a walk. You know, I used to do all those kind of practices to really
Those are good practices.
Yeah, to really get, I'm in charge. I'm the one thinking, feeling, engaging with life, and I'm doing it through this form, which is remarkable.
Yes.
When you're saying those things which I know to be real, I think about our friends who are maybe just looking at this as new or haven't been doing the practice. And it's hard, isn't it? When you feel you've been hurt by someone, or someone's rejected you, someone has defamed you, someone's been gossiping about you and you find out about it, and you be loving with them.
Well,
You know,
I have
it's
living
not
experience
easy.
of that. I'm just remembering, and I don't really need to go back there, but in a very early onset of my life, it's just a situation with someone who I have a lot of respect for and who I had turned to be a mentor and inspiration for me. For whatever reason, there was what I would call some karmic issues.
Okay, we'll get to that in a couple of
We'll
sessions.
get about that one later on.
Yeah.
But there was something that no matter what I did, it was never going to be right for that person. And actually, that person was instrumental in sharing her issue with me, with many others. And I remembered when I would go in front of these others, so to speak, and I could just feel the memory. I could feel that. I could feel it.
They already had a story about
They
you.
already had a story about you, and I had not even met them before.
Yeah, see that's
Or all I
really...
said was hi, and there was just like a real interesting response. And I think what saved me was maybe the concept of karma, which we'll talk about later. But what saved me was that I knew that I don't think I was what she was projecting that I was. Perhaps there is a trace of it, but if you believe in many birds like I do, is that was way back then in many birds, but I don't want to say that it's with me right now. Perhaps you might be picking up something in me. It might be something in me, but it's not in me now. And this is where, when it comes down to soul consciousness, you come to realize that a lot of things are going to come to you that aren't necessarily positive, but they're opportunities for you to use your power of love, to use the power of peace, to use the power of purity in that moment. And we don't do that enough. And that's why you've got to make it almost a mantra for you that when a challenging situation in a relationship comes to you, at that second, wow, I have an opportunity. Now let me practice that I am soul. I am soul conscious.
This comes back to your original comment about wanting to be a good person. Because if you
My
don't,
big aim.
but the thing is, if you don't have an aim, right? If you don't have an aim, you've got no container or no context in which to place the situations that come, the challenges that come.
I agree.
Yeah, so you're just being battered and thrown around in the sea of life. But if you're clear and you say, no, I liked when you said before about, I have to believe that this is true. And in fact, I think you move on from believing, because belief is still a mental construct, isn't it? You move to a point where you go, nah, now I know. After you experience through the practice, through the stillness, and you start to connect back behind the personality that has sort of been shaped, and you experience the relief of being able to rest in that truth of who you are.
Yeah.
And then you know it to be true, and so you want it to be more often, more of the time, with less gaps of, the old story of who I am.
Right, right.
And like you say, when other people have different thoughts about it, you have to be strong to connect back to your experience.
Let's talk on that, because I think many of us struggle with the other thoughts that people have about you, or the words that they say about you, which aren't true, but they hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
They do hurt. I will tell you that at that time, I was in a tremendous amount of pain internally, but nobody knew. I didn't tell anyone about it.
You were stoic.
Maybe it was just ego. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I felt like I didn't want to show anyone that I was vulnerable.
Yeah.
But inside, I was very hurt, because this was someone that I would turn to for guidance and for support. And when I went to that person, I felt someone who did not have my best interest at heart.
That's hard,
And so
isn't it?
it's very interesting the impact that it can have on the soul, and how the soul then comes across in its relationships in life. In life, whether it was in your spiritual life or in your physical life, whenever you have a relationship that means something to you, and that relationship does not offer you love that sustains you, or trust, or truth, or purity, it affects your outlook. It colors the way that you come across in your relationships, and it's happening to every one of us in the world.
Sure, when trust is broken, when you feel betrayed, then you're not natural.
When you feel betrayed, you're not natural. That's a very interesting point. When you feel betrayed, you don't feel natural. Wow. It's like that.
Tentative.
Two things, and remember now, I'm growing more and more spiritually. In my younger days, I used to feel like someone was attacking me, or I'm being abused or betrayed and all that. Now, I'm realizing that I'm not betrayed by anyone unless I give them permission. Now, I'm where I am because of my work on myself.
Sure.
And I am sure maybe something could come tomorrow, and that just struck that whole realization out.
Or you get another distinction on that realization.
Because the power of realization in spirituality, it has to increase. It's not that you become self-realized and that's it, you've arrived. So when we say in Rajyoga, who am I? It's that when I react and I come out in a negative way, I come out in an angry way,
Defensive way.
a defensive way, when I come out feeling a little bit afraid of someone when I speak, when I'm not me, when I'm not comfortable with expressing me, I go back when I sit in silence and I go, who am I?
Yeah.
who was that person?
Yeah.
That's not who I want to be.
But do you know what I've found when I do that these days? And it's less and less and less. You know, I feel much more comfortable to be authentic, not try to prove anything to anyone.
So much more
It
less
takes
stressful.
too much energy, really, to try and hold up some facade.
True.
But now if I see myself acting in a strange way, and I just laugh, because I think, wow, I still do it. After all these years, I caught myself doing it again.
It's true.
But it takes all the pressure off, because if I can laugh at myself and I can be kind to myself, this was for me a really important key. When I used to think, I have to be a good person, I have to become this, and I was like, chicka, chicka, chicka. And if I wasn't acting in alignment with who I thought I should be, I would be so critical of myself.
Oh, self-criticism.
Yeah, and it doesn't get you anywhere,
devastating,
because what you're doing is acting out of the self you don't want to be,
Yeah, yeah.
rather than acting from the self you are and being kind, being compassionate, being understanding, being loving to yourself. Leave aside other people who betray you. When you betray yourself and you act in a mean way, you're not in alignment. So this is I think is a really critical thing on any spiritual journey, is to really get to a point eventually of loving oneself, but initially to be kind and compassionate.
I was remembering my days before, I call them pre-spiritual days.
I wonder what you were like then.
I just remember my pre-spiritual days that I was such a type A personality. I still
Type A
am.
personality. Explain that for people who don't know what that is.
Type A personality means if I had a thought to achieve something, I just went for it. I don't think
There and bang.
I don't think no one or anything gets in your way unless you make them get in your way. That was my pre-spiritual days, and I thought that nothing really was impossible. I really thought nothing was impossible.
I think that's not a bad thing. That's
Yeah.
pretty.
And it was really for money and all of these things.
Okay,
and all
different
that.
motivation.
There was a different motivation, and I don't regret any of those days. I loved every minute of them. I love these two. These are just as important. And when I got into spirituality, when I got into realizing that the soul resides in the center, behind the eyes, sitting in me, and that I've been on this long journey,
Traveling through time.
and that there's a lot of me I've not been using that was true, it was a huge awakening for me. It was like sometimes in our families and in our cultures, we are told not to speak up, not to speak your feelings, not to show what you mean. And what happens is that sometimes if I was hurt and I'm not supposed to show that I'm hurt and I suppress that in the soul, one day it comes out and it doesn't come out pretty.
No.
So I come out like this awful person, and then I sit back feeling awful, that that's just not me. But I don't know where it started. I don't know where I started to go wrong. I don't know where I stopped being honest and open with expressing my truth, my wisdom, my life to another person that I trust and live with or care for. It happens a lot in marriages.
Yeah.
That sometimes in a marriage, subtly a wall is built. It wasn't intentional, but it's as if you're not supposed to say something, you're not supposed to do something, you're not. And it's maybe perhaps you're not supposed to do it, but at least ask why.
Give me an example, what you're talking about.
An example, let's say if you tell me, Jenna, go and get me water and get it for me every day. And I go, okay, I have to get you water every day.
Or even
Okay. Why?
Yeah.
Don't you have feet also? Wait, what? Don't you have legs that you can get?
Yeah.
Oh, well, no. It's just that when I was a child, my mother got me water every day. And go, oh, so now that I'm your wife, you look at me as your mother.
I'm your mother
I'm just
too.
giving like an example. Like now that I'm your wife, now I'm also your mother. And that's why you want me to get you the water. Well, I don't mind. But a sense of openness, a sense of not being afraid to communicate you. You're not trying to prove prove something to someone. You're not trying to overwhelm someone's authority or role in your life.
Yeah.
You are doing the best to be you in a relationship that you're going to die in. I'm talking about a marriage, so to speak. I'm talking about even the role of a mother and a child.
Can I just jump in here? Because I think
Sure.
what you're talking about is so critical and I think really important for the people who are watching, because
Yeah.
mostly everyone is in this primary relationship of a marriage. And I think when you say to be you, often people get into a marriage not knowing who they are. And so they're in relationship with someone else who also doesn't know who they are. And over time, it just breaks down.
It becomes difficult in majority of the marriages.
Yeah.
I do know that.
And so to be able to be who you are, that's why it's so important to do this kind of work that we're all engaged
The spiritual
in.
work together.
To say, okay, who am I and how do I communicate authentically? Not from anger, not from the feeling of suppression and rebellion, not from, fear or desire, but from knowing who I am. So it's really practical.
So
it's not
true,
this
so
theory
true.
of I'm a point of light, I'm a soul.
So true. It's a quality
floating
of
through
the soul.
universe.
You
Practical.
know, in the first lesson, soul consciousness is an awareness that I am love, worthiness, truth and purity and peace and bliss and happiness. Body consciousness says, I am what I call algae. Anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego. They're like the small ones.
Algae.
I
haven't heard that before.
This algae, which is A for anger, L for lust, G for greed, A for attachment, E for ego, this algae has replaced my truth. And there's no one to blame for that.
It just is.
It's something that had to happen in the drama of life.
Yeah.
And so when you accept that it's something that had to happen, then what has to happen also is that your truth has to also become the most prominent expression of yourself.
So it's this sort
And
of
this is the time for the
dance.
truth to become prominent in the expression of the self. So in Rajyoga meditation, you sit in the knowledge, knowing that the soul originally has these qualities. It is this worth. And what I love about the Rajyoga meditation is that it is a consistent practice as you're moving along every day in life. It's not that you go to the Brahma Kumaris Center,
on a
you
Sunday
sit
or a
for
Saturday.
an hour on a Sunday. Well, I hope they come every day.
Yeah.
But you come to the Brahma Kumaris Center and you sit for an hour and a half. You do your meditation, or you do the advanced classes, which is called the Murli, which takes you deeper. And then you go out and you're regular algae again.
Yeah, right.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
Put on your white clothes and you this, you take them off and
It's
you're
different. The power of knowing that 6.5 billion souls in the world, 6.5 billion, I don't care how vicious you've become, at the core of you is love, is worth, it's truth, it's purity, it's peace, it's happiness, it's kindness, it's benevolence, it's goodness.
Why
At the
don't you
core.
take us into an experience of that now? Just a
Sure.
couple of minutes. See if we can all come and sit to rest in that truth.
So for just maybe the closing of the show, we'll do a minute of meditation on the soul conscious self. So for a little while, as you're sitting there comfortably, allow your mind to just settle in a little of the conversation that was shared today, and acknowledge that the soul that is behind your eyes is eternally, originally, and truthfully love and peace. Om Shanti. If you just practice that even just every hour, 1 minute,
Nice.
it can make a world of difference.
And it does. It really does. You know, we have people who come and visit us in the center, and the music plays every hour for a minute, or 2 minutes actually we have. And afterwards they go, oh, thank you. That's so great. So, well, this is the end
Nice
of our
chit-chat.
first session. Very nice conversation.
Same here.
And thanks for joining us. And hopefully, we'll see you again in our next show, which we're going to pick up the next topic, which is from who am I to who is the Supreme Soul. So, which is the soul and which is the Supreme Soul? And we're going to explore that between Jenna and myself tomorrow. So, see you again in Awakening with Brahma Kumaris. Om Shanti.
If you wish to discuss your problem or have a question to ask or want to know your nearest Rajyoga Meditation Center, call us on 099 99 744 555.
Shanti.